welcome in the Heartbreak Kid, Brenden Nunes of the King's Beat podcast and the King's Pulse podcast as well. Always great to have Brenden in here. B, I want to start with something specific. You asked Trey Lyles a really good question last night about coaching, and there seems to be this like clear emphasis on rebounding that a lot of guys brought up yesterday. I know Keegan Murray brought it up today. What was your takeaway from that brief conversation with Trey Lyles last night?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. Always happy to join y'all. Trey's been rebounding the ball like crazy recently, and it seems to be like there was at some point a flip that switched where he just decided that he was going to do that more consistently. You know, it seemed like an effort thing. It seemed like there was some change. Over the last 10 games, he's second on the team in rebounding. Obviously, Domantas far and away number one, 12.7, but second is Trey with 6 a game, and he's playing 18 minutes a night. So I kind of asked him if there was any sort of moment that did click for him where he should try to do that more often, or if it was coached up for him at all. And he said that Coach Mike Brown called him out in front of the team that he should be a better defensive rebounder. And that's exactly what we've seen happening. And then asked Coach about it when Coach came out afterwards. And he said that, you know, Trey's always been a really good offensive rebounder. And if you could put all that effort in to go rebound offensively, I need you to keep that same energy on the defensive end. Trey's been doing that. I think that he was phenomenal last night, obviously 15 and 6 in that fourth quarter alone. But he's been big for them recently. And I think him emerging, if he can kind of keep a consistent role, would be big for this team, because there's been stretches where there's really only 7 guys it feels like you can rely on. And then that 8th one is kind of up in the air between TD, Trey, KZ, and some other guys they've played with. But if Trey can continue to solidify himself and play like he's been recently, I think that just helps the depth of this team even more.
Yeah, I agree, man. Especially when you get in a situation where, and we saw it a little bit in the last couple of games where they're playing him and Metu out there. I mean, that just spreads the floor like crazy. That's going to get they're going to get a wide open shot, it seems, every time on the offensive end with guys that can spread the floor like that. You got to worry about what happens on the defensive end. But it seems like Mike Brown has just made it clear the emphasis for what he wants these guys off the bench to be able to do, to be able to get consistent minutes, is rebound. You know, everybody, Terrence Davis was out there rebounding. Metu came back and rebounding. Trey Lyles. Do you see the same thing as like that is, I don't want to rank it like number one priority, but that's very high on the list of priorities for Mike Brown to see consistent minutes is the rebound.
For sure. These last 2 defensive player of the game chains, Trey Lyles and then Chimezie Metu, one of the things they mentioned when kind of explaining that is defensive rebounding. And I think it's just putting a period on a possession. You know, like Domas is really good positionally. I think he's impressed me more than what I would have expected defensively, given his, you know, a little bit smaller size for traditional centers. He doesn't have the length to typically block shots, but he's there in the right spot. But the best thing he does defensively is probably just rebound. Because if you're going to be a team that's bottom 10 in defensive rating, you certainly don't want to have to try to defend 2 different possessions on one trip down the floor by letting a team get an opposing offensive rebound. So that's something that they've been really good at throughout the course of this year. I haven't checked throughout the last couple of games, but not long ago, they were the best team in the league in defensive rebounding percentage. So I think it's just all about putting that period on a defensive possession. If you're going to have one of your successful runs on that end and actually can get a stop, you got to make sure to end it that way. So there's definitely a big emphasis on doing that.
Along the same lines, you and I talked pretty extensively Saturday night about Mike Brown's remarks about Keegan Murray, his very public remarks about Keegan Murray not getting any rebounds. And since then, Keegan has responded. And it seems Mike is just, I think Keegan's the only guy he did it publicly to. But it seems Mike is just challenging these guys just across the board to do simple things better. And obviously, in these guys' case, it's rebounding.
And it's things they're more than capable of doing. You know, it's not like these are big asks. It's, hey, just put a little bit more effort and make sure this is at the front of your mind, that you're boxing a guy out and making sure you're going and securing that. Like Keegan was a really good rebounder throughout the course of college. We haven't really seen that much in the NBA. I think it looks like to me that the physicality has kind of been an adjustment, and you see that most glaringly with his finishing, right? Coach has gotten on him about just dunk it on someone. Like, what's with all this double clutching and everything? It looks like he's just kind of overthinking the finishing a little bit. And to me, that has to do with the physicality that also somewhat translates to the rebounding. But HB has had some underwhelming nights rebounding. I thought it's kind of surprising. Like, Coach did mention HB after he had called out Keegan, but I think the HB has been on a similar level rebounding with Keegan. But there's improvement. After he got 0, Coach said he went up to him. He told us about this yesterday in postgame. He went up to him the game after, was like, "Hey, Keegan, how many rebounds you get?" And Coach said he was about to get on him about only getting 4, but Keegan's response was more than 0. And Coach was like, "Well, I can't say anything from there." And then he got 6 tonight, or 6 last night. So a little bit of improvement here and there. Coach is hoping he can get 5, 6 a night from Keegan. I'm sure you would hope the same for HB. And then you got the best rebounder in the league in Domas. So I think it's just about doing all of these little things. Like, you're not asking a lot, but if you can make sure to clean up all of these details, win the margins, win the possession battle, that's how you can try to scrape away with as many games as possible.
Yeah, I look at, sometimes I look at the rebounding situation, and I wonder if the fact that you have the leading rebounder in the game playing alongside of you, he gobbles up some of the rebounds that maybe might be there for you. But Keegan Murray showed last night, and others have showed, hey, you can still get 5, 6 rebounds if you just kind of stay locked in on it and keep that focus.
For sure. And I think that cleaning up the possessions prior to that is the next focus here. Like, making sure that you don't have to do it twice is why the defensive rebound is so important, but just cleaning up their defense is for sure where this team, I think the X factor on how far they're going to go, because we all know what they are offensively, one of the best offenses in the league. There's more nights than I expected, to be honest, where they're not shooting the ball great, but they're still one of the best offenses in the league. This team is going to go as far as their defense can take them. And there's some nights where that looks like it could be you're giving somebody a tough time in the first round. There's other nights where I'm like, shoot, what does a playing game look like?
What do you how do you feel about like last night's game, for example, and that, it's one of those, it's a 10-win team that you're playing. The Kings kind of got you on the edge of your seat for 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter winds up going the way that it goes. They did ramp up their defensive intensity. They scored 41 points in the process, which didn't hurt, but you could see some changes on defense. What do you like? What's your feeling on kind of the switch flipping? Like, they're not going to play defense for 48 minutes. I'd argue, we were talking about this a minute ago. I did argue, Kenny and I did, that they did flip the switch against the Lakers. They just flipped it way too late. And they had to use all that energy to fight themselves back into the game. What do you think about these like spurts of defense that they've been playing?
It's definitely frustrating. And I think that Mike Brown would say the same, and has kind of expressed the same, that like, if anything, you're showing that you are capable of being a good defensive team. So why not do it consistently? Like, I think it's unrealistic to expect anybody to do anything for 48 minutes, right? Sometimes you're going to have ups and downs, but give me 35, right? Not half the game. And I think just locking in a little bit more often, to the point where if you do that in the third quarter, then you get to relax a little in the fourth, and not completely take your foot off the gas, and relax to the point where you're letting them get back in it or anything, but you could kind of let the reserves try to take care of that a little bit. So it was frustrating, but you can't help but feel at very least satisfied that you came away with a win, especially after that closing quarter. I mean, outscoring them 41-20 is really impressive. And I think that they did a solid job protecting the rim. Houston, especially in that second, third quarter, were hitting a lot of threes. And I think it's guys that you're okay with shooting threes. Like KJ Martin was hitting them. I think Jalen Green was really getting a lot of shots up. So when some of his threes start to go down, you don't want to overreact too much. And they clearly are okay with giving up threes, specifically in this matchup, because Houston's one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league, as long as they're protecting the paint. So there was some aspect of Houston was just hitting shots that they were okay with giving up, but you definitely need to see it more consistent. Like, I don't know that I had any big takeaways from yesterday's game, still kind of walking away with the same concerns, but also, that those same strengths still exist.
Hey, what did you think about Terrence Davis starting in place of Kevin Huerter, who was out with a non-COVID illness yesterday? Are you surprised they kind of went that direction? I know the common thought is they want to keep Malik coming off the bench, but I mean, Terrence Davis can't even get in your rotation, and now he's going to be starting playing 19 minutes. Are you surprised?
It's pretty on brand for Mike Brown, though.
It is.
True. Are you surprised he went that route, or like you said, is it on brand and that's just how things go.
I think it's surprising, just from like outsider point of view, right? But to your guys' point, like this is on brand, like knowing how Mike Brand has dealt with this situation in the past and knowing that he likes to keep Malik coming off the bench, that like that he said before, that's a luxury. And Mike doesn't really care who starts. I think he's trying to just sort of keep his rotations, but he makes it very clear he doesn't really care that much about starters. It's about who's closing games and halves. And he was like, if TD's not going to be that guy, then Malik will be the one in there. So I don't think that he puts too much stock into that. And I think it's just trying to keep some continuity with that second unit. He could keep his rotations for the most part the same if he takes somebody that's just kind of on the edge of it and puts them in the starting lineup. It is a different way to go about things, and I feel like I've seen other coaches do it, but this isn't the first time we saw Coach Brown do it. So I was kind of expecting TD to slot in, and I thought he did okay. He still had a couple of his like erratic moments that I think TD is just going to have, but filled his role in the minutes that they needed him to, I felt like.
Yeah, I thought he corrected him pretty quick. I think that's actually one of the great attributes about Terrence Davis is he's going to have those moments, and they're usually on the defensive end, but he can be corrected pretty quickly. And he's going to bust his ass out there. I actually did think, as much as I love Terrence Davis, and I didn't think about it till James brought it up, I thought they might go Davion. I thought they might put Davion in that. And James mentioned why, like it's a fast team. They're young. They're probably going to run the entire game. I was like, yeah, that actually makes sense. And I was happy. Again, it was almost like a vote of confidence. Like, hey, things are tough right now, but I believe you can be better. I believe there are things you can do better. Where without one of our key pieces tonight, we expect you to step in and fill that role. And I think that's one of the great. We talk about Mike Brown pressing the right buttons, and maybe he's had a couple of missteps along the way, but he's kept this team. This seems to be a really tight-knit team. He has kept them all tight and close together.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just speaks to the importance of like even guys that maybe have been outside of the rotation and he hasn't loved the things that he's seen from them and their recent opportunities during games, that you got to get them in there every once in a while just to keep people engaged throughout the course of practice. It's a long season. And I think the chemistry among this group, the communication seemingly from what we could tell between the coaching staff and the players, I think Terrence Davis is one of the best examples, just how coachable he is and willing to hear that, knowing it's coming from a good place with Coach Brown, rest of the coaching staff. What we've seen with Trey Lyles, Trey was one of the guys I thought that maybe could slot into that starting lineup, but obviously went with TD. Trey was the one that ended up closing that game though. So yeah, for sure. I think that the coaching staff has done a great job, like making a connection with these players. And you can really feel like this feels like a team. I don't know about you guys, but last year it felt like guys showing up to play together, and this feels like a team.
Yeah. And part of that is guys like Chimezie Metu and his return back to the lineup. Do you think that, let me ask you, how did you feel about that? Like when he fell out of the rotation and they went to Holmes and Keita and everything, was that like, oh, well, that's probably what was expected? Or you kind of like myself where I was like, I don't know why that happened. They need to get Metu back in there. And, he comes back and he plays well in his first 2 games back in the rotation. How did you see that when he was out of the rotation? And do you think everything is kind of getting back to possibly getting back to how it was at the beginning of the season with somebody like him in the rotation?
I think when he fell out, I kind of understood. The whole issue there is like, what is the better option, right? And we came to realize that there really isn't one. But I think Messi does have his shortcomings. Like he was good in that. Was it the Lakers game prior to this Rockets one? They get a little jumbled up for me, but in this Rockets one, there you go. In this Rockets one though, it was you saw some of the shortcomings of Metu in my mind. He played 8 minutes and had 4 fouls, and fouls is a big thing that coaches highlighted for this backup 5, that you can't be racking up fouls and getting the other team even closer to the bonus. So after his defensive player of the game performance, and then you come out and have this one, like I think that's kind of where Metu leaves a little bit more to be desired. But when it comes down to it, like he has a strength that this roster is good at using. I think that him and Malik Monk have good chemistry in that second unit. I think the vertical spacing that Messi provides, and you're allowed to get out and transition a little bit more because Metu playing at the 5 means you're a little bit smaller, but you got more speed and athleticism. So I thought I understood a little bit why he fell out of the rotation, but it definitely became clear after trying Holmes, trying Keita, you even tried Len a little bit, that Metu had been your best option, and it was time to go back to it.
I jumped out of my chair when KZ Okpala shot a 3 last night. He shot 2 of them, but one of them was it was just like one of those moments where he caught it and no one's around him. Yeah. And like the anticipation in the crowd built, like, is he really going to shoot this 3? And he shot it. He made one, but the one I'm talking about, he missed.
It's funny you say that, because there was a time in the fourth quarter when Malik Monk had the ball, and there was kind of they got the Rockets in a scramble situation. He had the ball, and he pump fake, went baseline, came back towards the middle, and the next pass would be, oh, KZ's open. And he went and was about to make that pass. Oh, that's KZ. Cross court to Fox. I was like, damn.
That's tremendous.
After he made the first, the second one was like he was feeling himself a little bit.
Heat check.
Right.
It was a heat check. Hey, we have Domas pegged at 60 straight double-doubles. Yeah. You want in on this? That's one for the rest of the season. We've determined it's not the actual record isn't 53. Kevin Love has 53, and it's 53 straight double-doubles in the 2010-2011 season. The real record is some absurd crap from Wilt Chamberlain,
67 or something.
We've decided it's Kevin Love, and Domas should go break the modern double-double record. And like I would be shocked if he doesn't get a double-double every night, and just stunningly surprised, because it feels like in most games he's at minimum halfway there by the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, his stat lines at the end of the first always blow my mind. Like, it's like 9, 6, and 5 at the end of every first quarter. And I'm like, what is this? And it's just so casual for this guy. 31 double-doubles on the year in 39 games played. Leading rebounder in the league, unless that's changed as of recently, but I believe he's still there. The points are going to be there. He was 1 assist short of a triple-double last night. James has better numbers, but there's been a lot of nights tonight or nights throughout the course of this year that he's gotten real close to a triple-double, but not quite gotten it. Maybe could have kept him in there for a little while longer to let him get that one more. But, I mean, he just does it consistently, man, and it looks so casual. You know, I think some of the guys have said this, some of the guys on the coaching staff and on the roster as well, is that, like, you just expect it at this point. And I think that's a sign of a great player, right? It's just how consistently you can do it. And he does it every single night. And it's just, you almost become used to it. And that's just everything that you could ask for. He's so consistent on the offensive end. He gets it done defensively. The only way he doesn't get a triple-double is if he gets in foul trouble, or a double-double is if he gets in foul trouble. And we've seen that happening less outside of a few games here and there as the year has gone on. So, I mean, he's everything that you could have hoped for.
Hey, he's better than I thought he was. Like, I already thought he was good. I already recognized him as an all-star player, and he is better than I anticipated him being. And it also coincides with, his age. Like, he's 26 years old. Like, he's entering the prime of his career, and he's playing the best basketball I think he's ever played in his career.
100% should be an all-star. If he's not an all-star, I don't really know what we're doing.
All right.
It's been a discussion in the Chatty House. Can you clear this up, Brenden? Who's the cutout behind you?
That's Buddy.
It's Jamias Ramsey.
Yeah.
I think Kenny thought it was Buddy last time too.
No, I did. It was
okay.
Me, and that's how I knew it was Jamias, or Jamias, if you will. Jamias. Yeah, I saw that was a discussion happening in the chat house. That is, in fact, not a Buddy Hield cutout behind him. It's a Jamias Ramsey.
Hey, Brenden, do the Kings actually get this done? Now, let me tell you what I'm talking about.
Postseason.
They get 5 games over 500. Does it happen tomorrow? Will I be playing the Jim Lampley on Monday? It happened. It happened.
Well, it would be Tuesday, and they would actually hopefully be 2 games over that number, because they play Sunday.
Do they do it? I mean, they've been allergic to getting 5 games over 500 for so long. I think it actually happens this time.
I'm gonna say they do, but I will say, anytime somebody asks me how I think any game is going to go throughout the course of this year, I just always say I think they're good enough on offense to win any game, but they're bad enough on defense to lose any game. So
Mm.
I really never know how to feel going into a night. They were good on that second game that they played against Denver. The last time they had a homestand like this where they played a team 2 games in a row, they were a lot better in that second game. I think that Mike Brown has shown he's a coach that's really good at making adjustments, and the rest of the coaching staff as well. So I'm going to say yes. I don't feel super confident about it, though, I will say.
Here's the thing, though, Brenden, and I've been saying it for a long time. Me and Damian, we went over it a little bit. I know it does not feel comfortable to say these things. It doesn't feel comfortable because we all want them to be a better defensive team. Their superpower is their offense. They score literally better than any other team in the league at almost 120 points a game. And that, I don't want to say that should be the focus, but hey, let's do what we do on the offensive end. Because if we get to 120 like we typically do, the numbers show they're 16-2 when they score 120 points or more. When we do that, these other teams can't keep up. And I know it does not feel comfortable. I get it. I understand. I want them to play better defense too. Their superpower is what they do on offense. And I think that's how they go into these games. If they score, the odds are these other teams aren't going to be able to keep up.
They've scored 135 plus in each of these last 3 games. They dropped one of them. But I think of the 21-22 Atlanta Hawks. They were second in offensive rating, 26th in defensive rating. That team got knocked out by Miami 1-4 in the first round of the playoffs. And I think from the Kings' point of view, that's somewhat of a successful season, right? Not even somewhat. Like if you're talking about based on what we were expecting at the beginning of the year, I would totally call that a successful season. But they have a superpower. They just have a very clear kryptonite as well that they have got to clean up because the defense, you really can't lose any game. And if you're going into a play-in, for example, Kenny, do you feel confident that they will be able to lock in enough? Because the offense will be there, right? Like you're saying, but do you feel confident that they'll be able to lock in enough on defense for that game?
Yes.
They're also not going
once
to
again, the number, this is all I'm going to say. The numbers bear it out. When they score, when they play a Kings game, they rarely, if ever, lose. I know it doesn't feel good. 16-2 when they score 120 points or more.
So that's 18 games. That's a
little
less than half the games that they've gotten to 120, which means they've won 6 games where they haven't.
Yeah.
That is uncomfortable.
Yeah, which means you better score.
Which means you got to hit your shots every night if you're a Sacramento King.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Kenny said, yeah,
that's what they got to do. People are like, they got to
do.
But they got to play defense. They need to score.
They do need to play defense.
They do, but they need to score. This team will never win 105, 109. They're not winning those games.
Beat Cleveland once, 105-96. It happened once. There's historical
They're not
data.
winning those games. They better get up into the 120s.
Great stuff as always, Brenden. You can check Brenden out on the King's Pulse podcast, the King's Beat podcast. Doing a great job covering the team this year, man. It's always great to have you on. We're back.